Chairman Hughes, the public is in.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director Seisland. Could you please take roll?
Yes. Board Member Kuzno,
Here.
Board Member DePews. He'll be joining
Here.
us about 10 minutes later. Board Member Farrell. Oh. Board Member Hughes.
Here.
Board Member Kokoshi.
Present.
Board Member Lee. Board Member Mullen.
Present.
Board Member Piepenbrock.
Present.
Board Member Ralstrom.
Present.
Board Member Secord.
Present.
And Board Member Tompkins.
Present.
Chairman Hughes, we're ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the informational section of the TIFA meeting. As required by state law, we have to hold 2 informational meetings. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and go through a review since our last informational meeting on June 8th of 2021 regarding the social district. New businesses in the social district include Hollers and Growlers, bringing a total of 9 participating businesses. This is businesses that are allowed to bring alcoholic drinks out onto the sidewalk and walking on Kercheval and Charlevoix within the designated social district. Events in the TIFA, we had June 12th, the Summer Boogie on Charlevoix. June 26th, After 6 on Kercheval was canceled due to the storm event. July 10th, the Tom Petty Tribute Band on Charlevoix. July 24th, After 6 on Kercheval. August 28th, After 6 on Kercheval. September 18th of that. Saturday Night Throwback on Charlevoix. Winter Social on Kercheval on November 27th. At this present time, the new Department of the Public Works building construction commenced on October 27th, and we're looking at an expected completion of June 2022. Parking study MKSK, that has been completed by MKSK, reviewing meters, pay rates, additional parking considerations, etc. Alley cleanup, this board approved the backer landscaping, completing cleanup of overgrown shrubs and trees overhanging the alleys. Residential street lights, homes received improvements to lamp posts in front of homes. That program still continues. TIFA tree trimming, City Forester completed TIFA tree trimming in the residential and business district of the TIFA. The business improvement grant and residential improvement grant, or BIG and RIG programs, were approved by this TIFA board for business facade, signage, landscaping improvements, etc. Residential improvement grant for parking pad or demolition of unsafe garages. The trolley, the Business Association is operating the K-line trolleys. And the Grosse Pointe Park Business Association was established, which is the representation of the entire business community for Grosse Pointe Park, not just of the TIFA district, but of the DDA and as well over on Fairfax and in the MacCadju business areas. If there's any questions on this recap, I'd be happy to discuss further. Seeing no hands, Chairman Hughes, I have nothing further. Chairman Hughes.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Seisland. If there's no comment, would the next item be adjournment or?
Yes, so we're going to adjourn. So next item would be adjournment of the informational review session.
Okay, then I would request a motion for adjournment.
Nick, isn't there on the agenda, there's a public comment section. I don't think we asked for public comment yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. It's item 4 is public comment.
I just missed that. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Director Seisland, is there any public comment?
Let's see. I have no written public comment for the informational review session. However, I do have one hand up for the informational review. So give me 1 second to share my screen. And I'll put up the timer. Let me find that hand again.
Mary, I think I saw it.
Do you see it anymore? I don't see it. I think maybe the public comment will be for later in the meeting. I don't see the hand up anymore. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I would consider that public comment is closed for the informational review session.
Okay, then if there is no public comment, then we will move to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion that we adjourn the informational meeting.
Do we have a second?
There's Arthur Mullen.
Do we have a second?
That.
Thank you. Step here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All in favor for adjournment, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Meeting's adjourned. Nick, the next item.
Is calling to order the special meeting of the Tax Increment Finance Authority.
Okay. The first item on that meeting would be the adoption of the October 19 draft minutes. Is there any comment on those? If not, Director Seisland, I believe the next item would be public comment on the agenda items. Do we have any public comment?
We have to
Chairman
take roll
Hughes?
first.
We have
Say again?
a hand raised.
Okay.
We have to take roll call first for those minutes.
I'm sorry. Very good.
Roll call. Board Member Kuzno,
Yes.
Board Member DePews, Board Member Hughes,
Yes.
Board Member Kokoshi,
Yes.
Board Member Lee, Board Member Mullen,
Yes.
Board Member Peipenbrock,
Yes.
Board Member Ralstrom,
Yes.
Board Member Secord,
Yes.
and Board Member Tompkins.
Yes.
Nick, maybe I just missed it. Was there a motion to accept those minutes? Or do we
I
just-
believe the motion was made,
Okay.
and then, yeah, and then Kurt Ralstrom seconded.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Okay, thanks.
Correct.
Okay. All right. At this time now, we have a public comment of agenda items. So I do have two written public comments that I'm going to read. This first public comment comes from Darcy McConnell of the 1400 block. As resident of the TIFA district, I want to commend this honorable body for investing in a professional study to assess the parking needs of this area. Residents and business owners have both indicated their separate and collective perspectives, so having independent body weigh in is laudable. That is why I am concerned that despite the study's findings that there is no immediate need for additional parking in the Kirchville district, that this body is considering demolishing the house for 1166 Maryland. The report reads on page 28, enhanced wayfinding, adding meters or pay stations, and adjusting time limits and rates will be critical to help with the turnover of parking. After these initial recommendations are implemented and parking occupancy levels are starting to rise in multiple lots and parking lots, then more public parking should be added to the Kirchville district. The report calls for a myriad of action items long before it suggests the need for additional parking. As a result, I am writing to both voice my opposition to the demolition of 1166 Maryland and to ask that this raising by TIFA be halted. I'm also asking that TIFA instead implement the initial recommendations until the increased demand for parking in the Kirchville district is realized. Thank you for your consideration. This next comment comes from Mr. Brian Vosberg and other residents of the 1100 block of Maryland. On April 8th, 2021, we, the neighbors on the 1100 block of Maryland, sent an email to City Council, TIFA, and Planning Commission objecting to the proposed demolition of 1166 Maryland for another parking lot, listing 6 reasons for the objection. The first reason we objected to the demolition was that a proper parking study had not been conducted. We also requested that residents be included in the parking study, and the TIFA chair committed to this at their January 2021 meeting. You now have a completed professional parking study for the commercial areas. It did not include residents in the parking study as you had committed to. The parking study lists 18 steps the city should undertake. 7 of which should be undertaken before demolishing more buildings and expanding off-street parking lots. And yet on your agenda, right after review of the parking study, is an agenda item to once again propose the demo of the house at 1166 Maryland. We restate our strong objection to the demolition of 1166 Maryland and demand that you, the TIFA board, follow the action steps listed in the study that you commissioned paid for with our tax dollars. During the budget process in June of this year, we were also told that the existing city parking lots, which do not comply with the city's own codes and ordinances, would be finally improved and brought into compliance with funds allocated in the current fiscal year's budget. The only work that has been completed to date has been city workers moving city-owned wood screen fencing to a privately owned lot on Lake Point that resulted from the demolition of another home. How long will it take the city to finally bring its own parking lots into compliance with own codes and ordinances on screening, landscaping, drainage, lighting, and other issues? Thank you. Chairman Hughes, now I'm going to go into spoken public comment. Okay, the first public comment, I'm going to ask Mr. Greg Donnelly to please state your name and city of residence, and please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Greg Donnelly. I'm a resident of a block just north of the Kirchville Business District. Really just a few houses north of Kirchville. And neither myself nor any of my neighbors that I am aware of were asked for data or our opinions as part of the recent parking study. And I think that's both unfortunate and inappropriate. We don't need more parking in this neighborhood. And in fact, the parking study clearly showed that we don't need more parking in this neighborhood. It showed that we already have an excess of parking along Kirchville. And that's not even taking into account the over 100 parking spots that are less than 1 block east of the Kirchville Business District at Defer and Pierce schools. Couldn't we work with the schools to use those existing lots after school hours and on weekends? In addition, the planned Scott Art Center, just 2 blocks south at Jefferson, would introduce hundreds more parking spaces into the neighborhood. Couldn't we use the K-Line trolley as a shuttle to those parking lots? What this neighborhood does need is more housing. It's an incredibly popular place to live, with any homes for sale often being on the market just for mere days, if not hours, before they sell. Why are we tearing down yet another house at 1166 Maryland, which is at least the 6th house to be raised in as many years in this neighborhood, in the context of all of this data that shows us we should not be doing so? Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment, I'm going to ask Mr. Brian Vosberg. If you can please unmute yourself, please state your name and city residence, and please go ahead.
Brian Vosberg, City of Grosse Pointe Park. And I just wanted to say that I'm excited to see the completion of the parking study. And I hope that this board, as well as the city, uses it to plan their programming and budgets for several years to come around parking, which has been an item of discussion for a long time among residents, as well as among this board, as well as business owners. I think it provides a good plan for this board moving forward. And my block did submit the letter, and so that was just read, so I won't rehash those items. I did want to raise a concern with the demolition contracts listed in the bid packet. It said that those bids were from April of this year. If that is correct, as the memo in the board packet says, the pricing is not current for the demolition. And it's very likely actually higher today if those contracts were to be entered into. The other item is the new item that was added, appears to have added on Monday for the DPW building and the change orders. And I'm curious where are the change orders 1 through 6? This is for change orders 7 and 8 on the agenda tonight. That has not been brought to the board, change orders 1 through 6, and wondering why they were not presented for approval to the board. And then more importantly, we, the citizens, were promised repeatedly that the new DPW facility construction cost would not exceed $4 million. And here we are at the beginning of this construction process. Nothing vertical has even been built yet, and there's change orders totaling almost $180,000. Just wondering what is going on and why we're being asked to pay extra for something we were told we would not have to pay extra for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment is Mary. Mary, if you could please state your name and city of residence, and please go ahead.
Thanks, Nick. Mary Rulo, Lake Point Street. The first part of my comments are also, I'm joined by 11 other residents from all the blocks from Weyburn through Nottingham. And we're in opposition to the demolition of 1166 Maryland. The parking study makes clear existing parking options are clearly underutilized, and they are recommending multiple best practices to improve current options for both customers and residents. They explicitly conclude that there may be a future need to add more parking spaces for Kercheval, but that after these initial recommendations are implemented and parking occupancy levels are starting to rise in multiple blocks and parking lots, then more public parking should be added. So we ask, who's really requesting this demolition and why? The city should follow the action steps listed in the study that you commissioned and that we paid for with our tax dollars. We also note that no environmental impact study has been done regarding demolition and what is to follow on that site. Further, existing city parking lots are still not in compliance with city codes. Staff time and TIFA dollars should be spent on improving current parking first. Thank you for considering those views. Now, only on behalf of myself, I want to make two more points. The first is, despite the pledge of Chairman Hughes at the January meeting to include in the parking survey the 3 to 4 adjacent houses to the commercial blocks, this didn't happen. I would appreciate an answer tonight. Why not? Is the word of the chair to be followed or not? Second, I strongly object to rating the residential improvement program to pay for a DPW-related change order. Please explain how this is a TIFA resident improvement. Frankly, it's bad enough that the TIFA has become the go-to piggy bank to fund projects that benefit the entire city, like the $4 million bond for the DPW building. But enough is enough. In this year's budget alone, $165,000 additional dollars were allocated to the DPW project on top of the bond. As someone who trips on uneven sidewalks on my TIFA block, I assure you the TIFA money can be spent directly to benefit TIFA residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment is Mr. Tom Steen. Tom, if you could state your name and city residence, and please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Tom Steen. I'm a resident of Grosse Pointe Park. I think some things are getting lost in the comments that are being made. I think this survey was conducted during the COVID time, so businesses were down, traffic was down, parking wasn't as much in demand. Whereas right now, business owners, I think across the board, are all saying they need more parking. I think in order to stimulate more economic growth in the neighborhood, we need parking to allow people to enjoy our fine businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment is Mr. Kevin Rasmussen. Kevin, if you could state your name and city of residence, and please go ahead. Kevin, we'll try again if you'd like.
Yeah, I just had to unmute my phone. You can hear me now.
I can hear you.
1100 block from Maryland. And concerning the house at 1166 Maryland, right now it stands like a house, like an island to itself. There's already a parking lot between it and my house, several houses down, and then the alley on the other side. There have been 3 houses, one be next to it and the 2 behind it on Lake Point, taken down to produce a parking lot, and it's the last one. And I would like to see that parking lot completed, and it could be something contiguous That's my comment.
Thank you. Next public comment, we have Amy Christine. Amy, if you could state your name, city residence, and please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Amy Greenroyd, City of Grosse Pointe Park. I just want to echo and applaud the comments by Mary Rouleau and Brian Vosberg. I don't need to repeat what was said. I did include my name in the letter provided by Mary Rouleau. I drove by the 1166 address today. I'm wondering if the city also owns 1170 and what would be remaining of that island of a fourplex. I'm not sure if there is already a plan for it. I also reside in the TIFA district, and there's, speaking of sidewalks, areas that are completely submerged a majority of the year. And I could go on, but I just, again, want to echo the comments that have already been made, questioning the rationale and what the future plans for that space are, and strongly encourage the board to go by the parking study that was concluded recently, and we did pay for it. And it does mention the comments of the business owners as relates to the pandemic and the impact of the parking. So that was obviously included in the study to be accommodated for, traffic changes, given that we're in a pandemic. And the business owners, I believe, stated in the study that it was pretty much back to normal as it related to their parking. But we can all look at that again to get the correct quote. Thank you so much for your time. I'm complete.
Thank you. Chairman Hughes, we have no further public comment.
Thank you, Director Seisland. Moving forward, do you have a quick summary of the parking study that was just completed, Director?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Hughes. So within my memo, MKSK, which is the city master plan consultant, conducted a parking study of the TIFA district, which included Kercheval, Charlevoix, and Mack Avenue. The consultants with volunteer assistance conducted parking counts, different days and times to measure the level of impact. The study is going to provide the city and the public safety department ways to consider improvement of meter options, enforcement, rates, transit, electric vehicle charging stations, loading and flexible zones, parking policies, and for bike improvements. This study provided short and long-term recommendations, including the following short-term recommendations, which I highlighted, which I'll go over briefly. On Kercheval, recommendations to replace existing meters with updated meter technology in pay stations along Kercheval, replace existing outdated meters with new meters in all public parking lots, implement wayfinding signage to direct users to public parking lots, look for opportunities for new parking in the district, which could include extending the parking lot south of Kercheval to the west between Maryland and Weyburn, implement EV or electric vehicle designated parking spaces in 1 to 2 public parking lots along this corridor, add handicap parking spaces to public parking lots with 2 to 4 spaces per block of public parking, add bike racks and remove existing bike racks to more prominent visible locations, encourage flexible dining options for those that are picking up their local Chinese food or pizza real quick in street parking spaces, enhance existing crosswalks to improve and promote pedestrian circulation, and enhance streetscaping along Kercheval and extend to the western portion of the district. On Charlevoix for short term, we can add meters and pay stations along Charlevoix, which currently all are unmetered at this time, and stripe those parking spaces. It is recommended we look to add more bike racks and remove existing bike racks to more prominent visible locations. And additionally, bike racks could be installed if curb bump outs are implemented along here. Look for opportunities for new parking in the district as well. Improve streetscaping along the entire corridor, which should include widening the sidewalks and constructing curb bump outs. One repeated issue we heard in this district of Charlevoix was to address visibility issues at the intersections. Curb bump outs could push the stop signs further out and help with sight lines as well as increase pedestrian safety. Encourage flexible dining options in existing on-street parking spaces. On Mack Avenue, add meters and pay stations along Mack. Currently, they're all unmetered, and stripe all parking. Add meters or pay stations along Maryland and Nottingham within the first block off of Mac. Replace existing outdated meters with new meters or pay stations in all public parking. Implement the EV designated parking spaces of 1 to 2 parking lots along the corridor, and add bike racks and remove existing bike racks to more prominent visible locations. I do want to emphasize as well, as part of this, the stakeholder meeting, which was conducted in July with businesses and customers, DDA and TIFA representatives, that part of these studies, just some quick facts, 30% of respondents responded that there needs to be increased wayfinding in identifying where those public parking spaces are. 87% drive to the business districts right now within the TIFA, and 70% of respondents indicated they feel more parking is needed. At this time right now, myself and public safety, we're also looking into a similar program that's implemented right now in Royal Oak and Hamtramck, which actually in the city of Flint, which is a smart metering system. And so this is something that I'll be bringing forth to the TIFA board at a later time for their consideration, along with other measures, as there's an increased need for updating our meters, which our DPW has done a great job of fixing it over the years, but we need to seriously update those. Having cards in there and pay, as well as more flexible options. Chairman Hughes, that is my brief recap. I'd be happy to discuss any further if anyone else has comments.
Thank you, Director Seisman. Real brief. I just wanted to confirm that relative to the Kirchhoff short-term plan, the first items on that relate to the meters, which you are working on a proposal for the TIFA to review, and we appreciate that. More likely we'll see that sometime at our next TIFA meeting, I would imagine in the first quarter, correct?
Correct.
Wonderful. The next item is signage, wayfinding, which also you're working on with public safety. And thirdly, was the opportunity to look for more opportunities for new parking in the district. And the last question that I have is, Director Seisman, the bids that you have for the demolition, are those amounts current?
Yes, that's in a separate agenda item, but yes, those are current, and I can discuss that further when we get to that item.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, Chairman Hughes, this is Arthur Mullen. I wanted to just have a
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
About the parking study, and one of the things is being a former DDA director, I do appreciate all the work that MKSK has done, but there's oversight that I'd like to see them add into the recommendations, because the report we received was that it's still a draft as of October, and it's our first time seeing it, and I'd like them to also explore and probably include what's called parking management, which is where where you operate the parking system by increasing the parking rates along the street to encourage turnover in front of the businesses, which is one of the issues that we do see in each of the districts, depending on the time of day. But the idea is that your street parking spaces are your most valuable, and you direct that and control that by rates, and then you encourage with lower rates and longer time parking in our city lots. So I'd like to see that they would include that as a using parking management as one of the tools that can help get more out of our system as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick comment, Chairman Hughes, to Board Member Mullen's points. He is correct. I know there is some small language about it. I do think they could probably expand on that more. There is a table, Arthur, if you looked as well, that explains showing we're at 25 cents. We got a couple other communities that are much more, and you're absolutely right. We want to encourage those that in the busiest intersections so we can have that higher turnover. Right. And this is something we definitely.
Right. And Director Seisman, I think one of the concerns that they also addressed that I found in Mount Clemens a lot was that you have employees and even business owners parking in front of their businesses. And so those are the spaces that bring the most money into the business. And we want to make sure that those are the spaces that are available for the people who are driving in, which 87 or 89% of our people are driving in. So we want to make sure that the spaces out front are turning over. And the way that you do that is through this parking management, increase the fee on the street, make sure that the parking lots are lower and longer. So, but if you could ask them to make sure to amplify that, I think that's a recommendation that we need. It is proven that what they found in the study were those pink hotspots at certain times of the day. And that's because everyone's looking for the spot right in front of where they're going. And some of those spots may not be available because employees are parking there. And we want to make sure that those are available for clients and customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Hughes, we can move on. To the next.
One moment, Director Seisland, I do have one observation. I know that in the study for the inventory for the Courchevel utilization, there were a number of spots that were included in the inventory that included 61 spots on the residential streets, that included 54 spots in the Beaumont lot, that also included 32 spots in private lots that are not public lots. I believe it's listed as additional limited restricted parking. My view is that residential spots should not be included in the inventory, because that's what we want to do, is we want to get the employees and the patrons out of the residential spots and having them park in the business district. Also, there was conversation about utilizing the Beaumont lot. Beaumont's a great organization. They've rebuked us multiple times, as recently as the Winterfest, when they, 2 days before the event, rejected use of their parking lot for food trucks. While they're good folks, they're in the business of healthcare, not parking, and they made it clear they're not interested. Now, will we continue to request use of their lot? Sure. But at this point, that is not really part of a long-term viable plan. I believe the parking study was a very good study. It has a lot of different items. Some initiatives we'll use and really leverage and focus on, more so than others. But it was clear. It did say look for additional spaces for parking. We surveyed the businesses. 100% of the businesses told us they either need more parking for their businesses or the district needs more parking. We like to see our businesses grow. The community is strong. It's getting stronger. And as a result, the values of our neighborhoods are getting stronger. That's important to all of us as residents. We like to have the employees and patrons park in the business district, not in the neighborhoods. And I believe looking for more opportunities for parking is a very good thing to do. Again, we started talking about this in October of 2020. We tabled it. We surveyed the businesses a year ago, or actually in January, February. Then we tabled it again to do a formal study. We've done a formal study. We have a lot of data. We've talked about this, in my opinion, for long enough. We now have an opportunity to actually do something tangible. And I suggest that we pursue that course of action. Thank you.
Okay. With that said, if there's no further, Board Member Kuzno.
Yeah, this is Board Member Kuzno. I have some comments. In reading the study, first of all, their points about parking meters is very, to me, very vital. I think we need a definite upgrade in the parking meter system. For two reasons. Number one, for function of controlling the parking, as Arthur was saying. Number two, just state of the art. From a business community standpoint, we're trying to make a presentation. And right now our presentation is that we're kind of old and not staying with it. In that vein, I also look at and say, mentioned striping of the lots, the roads and that. As I drive through the neighborhood, we don't have any striping in any of our parking spots down the middle of our roads even. And I think the striping, presents a nicer environment, a more controlled environment, which is going to be more conducive to the business community. As far as the overall results of the study, I think that there's some factors that I consider that are important. If we're going to take the advice of the study, they mention handicap parking lots, taking spaces for bicycles, creating bump outs, and I agree with the Charlevoix situation. I turn off of Maryland onto Charlevoix to go home in the evening, and I come to that corner, and I'll tell you, at least once a week, I start to pull out and there's a car coming and I don't see them. I'm driving a big vehicle and I can't see the cross traffic coming. So yeah, there's an issue there. If we're going to put in electric vehicle charging stations, all of those things are going to reduce parking. Now, COVID is obviously, and the flood has also been a factor in our parking utilization. So we're missing right now, and during the parking study, we were missing Gabrielle's Flower Shop, we're missing the bakery, and we have a new restaurant at the corner of Kirchville and Maryland. So there's 3 businesses right there that are going to be added to the equation. Plus, I believe that COVID has still kept the restaurants down a little bit. From there, as far as traffic on Charlevoix, they mentioned maybe speed bumps are, an issue that could be added in, or put in another 4-way stop like you did on Kirchville to slow traffic down that way as well. As far as the Beaumont lot goes, I would love to see, shared usage of that Beaumont lot, but I think that their biggest concern is liability. Anything that happens on that property, they could get sued. They're a large corporation. They just want to stay away from that altogether. So my take on the overall study is I think there's great points. I think we need to make some good improvements, but I still think we need more parking. And that 1166 Maryland is, as Mr. Rasmussen said, it's just a house on an island that's sitting out there. And rather than waiting another year or two and finding out that, oh yeah, indeed, we do need parking, let's get moving on it now. And because I think, to me, it's obvious that we still need to do that. One other issue there that I noticed, the existing parking lot between Maryland and Lake Point, there's a rather large bump in the land. It goes up very high, whereas Kirchville is very level. So I think, if we're going to redoing a parking lot, I think leveling that land out is going to make some good sense. That is my comment for the night. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Piepenbrock, you got your hand raised?
Yes, I had a couple of quick comments. I did want to say that I found the MKSK study very helpful, provided a lot of valuable information. One thing that I hope we are not considering is, I know they mentioned putting meters on residential streets. So I hope that that's off the table for us. I don't think that's a good idea. And I also am concerned about the lack of residential input. I feel like we're obliged to include the residents more. So I don't know what we can do at this point about that, but that I think we missed it there. And I personally think that we should consider, making the changes that don't require raising houses at this point. We should try those first. And in the future, if we find that that's necessary, then we can look at it at that time. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment at this time? Seeing none, Chairman Hughes, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the 1166 Maryland demolition consideration.
All right. Thank you, Director Seisland. We do have a resolution, propose a resolution to remove the structure at 1166 Maryland to make way for additional parking. The structure is an island, alley on one side, parking on the other side. We feel it would be a significant positive addition to parking to the business district and remove employees and patrons from the residential streets, thus benefiting the residents as well. Director Seisen, what are the next steps?
Just a couple comments regarding this. The TIFA board did in April of 2021, this board requested that myself to obtain competitive bids for future consideration. These bids are current to date for the demolition and abatement of the TIFA home. 3 competitive bids for your consideration were Denman Contractors, Blue Star, and Adamo. And this was something that, after MKSK completed the parking study for these districts, one of the short-term recommendations on Kercheval was identified for an increased parking demand within the district. If this were to be done due to the winter season, the work could commence for demolition, and future construction for public parking would have to take place in the spring of summer of 2022. One comment I do want to make too, I want this board to strongly consider as we move forward, if they do move forward with this, is that we need to really look at this from a stormwater management point as well. It's very important with these strong storm events we're having that, we're obviously going to look at, having to decrease that runoff. And I think there's great opportunities. And I think this board is one that we can be an example for future parking lots that are built within the district. So those are my comments at this time, Chairman Hughes. If this is something that the board would like to do, I would recommend a low bid be given to Denman Contractors at $42,300. But at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments from the board.
Director Seisland, thank you very much. I would expect that we would, in the design of the area, that we would incorporate proper stormwater management, and that would be incorporated into the design of the facility. Thank you.
There's nothing further. Seeing none, I would, someone would have to make a motion for consideration to the bid from Denman Contractors.
This is Director Hughes. I'd like to make a motion to pursue the demolition of the structure at 1166 Maryland. Do I have a second?
This is George Hopkins. I second.
I would like to second as well.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, if I may. This is Board Member Mullen. I agree with Darcy McConnell's letter. I don't need to go over it. I think the board has heard my comments about the need for parking, and I do believe that we should be following our parking study. With that said, I can see where the votes are going to go this evening. I agree that we need to make sure that we're dealing with the stormwater. I also, as a planner, feel very strongly that we need to also make sure that we are buffering the adjacent properties. And I expect that the design our stormwater design should be designed in such a way that we're buffering adjacent properties next door and across the street. I think this may be a little bit too strong of a word, but abhorrent that we're forcing people living next door to have parking without any buffer. But my comment is I'd rather stay with the parking study, but I have a feeling I'm going to be on the short side of this vote. But I do feel strongly about the stormwater. We need to address that. Pervious paving, swales where we can accommodate the water in that buffer in the buffering areas. Thank you.
Mr. Mullen, this is Committee Chair Hughes. I agree with you about the design, about the buffers, about stormwater management, and that I would highly recommend, and I believe we will all agree on that. That would be part of the design, but that would be the next step. Thank you.
Chairman Hughes, would you like me to call the question?
Yes, please, let's call the vote, Director.
Okay. Board Member Kuzno,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Board Member DePues, Chairman Hughes,
Yes.
Board Member Kokoshi,
Yes, in favor.
Board Member Lee, Board Member Mullen,
No, opposed.
Board Member Pipenbrock,
No, opposed?
Board Member Ralstrom,
Yes.
Board Member Secord,
Yes.
and Board Member Tompkins.
Yes.
Chairman Hughes, the motion is passed.
Thank you very much. Director Seisman, could you then proceed to the next agenda item?
Yes, so as a public comment was indicated, this was an item that I added to the TIFA board for consideration of the DPW project. So I'd like to go through and give you a description with my memo. The original stormwater design for the new Department of Public Works yard called for a chamber detention system. After further discussion, a revised design eliminated the chamber detention system and replaced it with a corrugated drainage pipe. Both these systems were to tie into the existing combined sewer line running down the alley. However, everything changed after the June and July storm events. These events in the region devastated our community along with other communities within the region. And so going back to the drawing board, the city architect and general contractor working with Wayne County Public Surface Permitting Office, we revised our original design for the benefit of reducing flow in the area and separating the alley between the 1,400 blocks of Maryland and Wayburn to Gothi. The revised county approval drawings with the final piping design include additional required items, including more manhole structures for about $60,000. The pricing for the separated dedicated storm line down the alley is included for $97,000. These are stormwater management upgrades for the overall system that slows down the release of stormwater into the system, separates the alley in the 1,400 block of Maryland and Wayburn to Gothi, which is something that the city is looking forward to as we're trying to dry out Grosse Pointe Park. And at this time, what I'm looking for from this board for consideration is that we would approve this expenditure and change order, in which there was a comment in regards to some other change orders. At this time, this is the only change order that we have in front of us. That's $78,000 out of the residential improvement program, which as well, this is going to be benefiting those residents on the 1,400 block of Maryland and Wayburn, as well as the DPW yard. I've asked that City Council at its December 13th meeting will consider approving the other half of that expenditure for $78,000 further. So I would recommend from this board to approve this change order, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments you have.
Director Seisman, this is Chairman Hughes. So this basically breaks out the storm and the sanitary for the 1,400 block of Wayburn and Maryland.
Yep, down the alley to Gothi.
Okay, very well. And as a result, that will limit the incident of having stormwater take over residents' homes. That's the idea, correct?
This would help alleviate allowing more stormwater to go over to the Patterson pumping station and reducing the amount over to the Jefferson station, as well as going down the DRI, which is the Detroit River Interceptor, to Great Lakes Water Authority.
And the notion is that the city sewer budget would pick up half of it and the TIFA would pick up the other half, correct?
That's correct. And I considered this, Chairman Hughes, as part of this board elected to build the DPW building with their $4 million bond. And as part of this is a program that would not only benefit the Public Works building, but also benefit the residents within the TIFA district.
And that also includes the tile field under the parking lot that creates a bit of a buffer for the flow, correct?
Can you repeat that again?
That includes the tile field reservoir under the parking lot that will create a buffer for the flow.
Yes, there's more piping that's under the DPW yard that'll hold back some of that stormwater, from flowing and just alleviating, more from having it going down the alley.
And did you say that was a requirement by the state?
After working with Wayne County Permit Office and regarding our stormwater management plan that's been adopted by the city council that we have to follow in regards to, this is something that we, along with our architects and general contractors, agreed that it is a bigger bite of the apple, but I think it's in the best interest for this TIFA in the city that we start this. And as we move
Director,
forward,
thank you very much. Great work. Thank you.
Director Seisland, what's the total cost for this?
the total cost of this is approximately $156,000. And $78,000 would be asked of you tonight from this TIFA board.
Thank you.
Director Seisland, this is Arthur Mullen. A couple questions would be, why wasn't the alley separated before? And so why are we being asked to do this when the residents have been paying for sewer separation for the last, I believe, 19 years? I also would like to know, there's no budget that we've been provided, and I've asked before that we have some budgets we can look at to make some decisions. This is coming from the residential improvement program, but I do believe that the benefits are going to accrue across the residential improvement and across the business improvement district. The businesses had significant flooding as well that took place. I also would like to know what kind of stormwater system was designed into the facility and why we're retrofitting it now. And we had a $4 million not to exceed, and lo and behold, here we are, $4 million, and we're exceeding that, and why we aren't going to see any savings from our design build project.
Okay, so I'll try and run through a couple of those. I was not here when the sewer separation happened many years ago. That was a decision that was made within the city administration and others at that time regarding the separation of the storm and the sanitary from the city. And so at this time, this is something that, we do realize that those alleys are not separated. This is something that I've expressed to our city council and to our DPW and our engineers that this is an extreme need for us that'll help reduce flow to the Jefferson Station through the DRI to the Great Lakes Water Authority. In regards to your other question regarding the $4 million project and why this expenditure is being asked outside of that, my answer at this point is, the original design was looking at a large trench drain that was going to be within the DPW yard. This was going to hold some of that back, and then it would go into the sanitary system. However, after these storm events, we had to change how we looked at this. This was something that, looking at in the best interest moving forward, we decided that, this is something that benefits DPW and the residents, and that this is something that, we did look into seeing if there was other areas we could save, but with the cost of material and the project itself, this is what we're looking at and we're faced with, unfortunately, right now. However, I do strongly believe this is an extreme benefit for everybody. I missed your two other questions. If you could repeat, I'm sorry.
Sure. One of them was, one is you were kind of alluding to, and you said was a benefit to us all, is why is this going to be a charge to the residential property, the residential improvement program, instead of divided across the programs? Looking at our budget, I see we've got $75,000 for engineering professional services, and I'm not sure where we, as the TIFA board, expend $75,000 for engineering professional services, and why we wouldn't be considering other traffic lines or other budget lines for expenditure.
So as part of this decision with that board member Mullen, I did see that this was a benefit to the residents. That's why I did see in here the residential improvement program. This board did approve as well, $75,000 for a resident grant program. But certainly if we want to divide this up further, maybe a half and half between the engineering professional services and a residential improvement program, we could do so. We are a departmental budget, and so we could go ahead and do that if this board elects to. I see no issue with that at all.
Does the rest of the board understand what Nick is talking about? Would be the question. Is that we'd be splitting the funds out from just not coming from the residential improvement program.
Mr. Mullen, I understand that. I have no issue with that. If part of it comes from the residential budget and part of it comes from the engineering budget, that to me is a non-issue. There's no problem with that. I do think it's the right thing to do, though.
This is Board Member Cousineau. I just have a comment. Kind of going along with what Arthur said. Yeah, I agree. I think the item should be shared. The other comment is that I'm kind of looking at it, and it was a question I asked, I think, at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago about the $4 million figure that we were pretty much locked in at that. I certainly see the need and the value for the decision, but I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't included in the original budget and the original plan. And so that's my only comment, but I'm in favor that, yeah, it needs to be done. There is no question in light of the flood. And I think, yeah, we should split it.
Other question would be, is there other sources for this that aren't from the TIFA, which would be out of the COVID recovery funds? I don't know. If we're getting more money from the federal government, and this is part of COVID or part of the environment, but I would like to be able to, I would like to preserve as much of the money available for investment on things that aren't, a structure that's already coming.
And so 2 points to Board Member Cousineau and Mullen. One of those was the original. Was this included? The original design of the stormwater program, which was I called like a trench drain, was actually within the budget under the $4 million. However, after revising these plans, working with engineering and seeing what that cost was, this is an additional expense outside of that $4 million. And so there's that one. And then as well, I forgot.
What other funds could we possibly be used?
So one of the things that I've been working on, Board Member Mullen, is working, Wayne County has a lot of ARPA dollars. So that's the American Rescue Plan. We did submit many applications to Wayne County for water and sewer improvements. However, the county at this time is not looking at those very strongly. They've advised us they're looking more for programs, of equity and helping businesses, as well as, potential streetscapes in that. Mack Avenue corridor was submitted among the Grosse Pointes. And so that's something we're getting approved. It looks like we will get approval from the county. And as well, in addition to, and the city side of things, we're looking at right now, we just spent close to $1 million with Pipe Tech for environmental services, which that was part of the American Rescue Plan dollars that we are using. We're going to use another part of that program for downspout disconnections. And then we're looking at probably within the next year, if the city looks at further opportunities, such as what's been discussed with the extreme emergency release valve. The city administration did apply for a grant through FEMA called the BRIC grant, and that would also assist with that potential EERV. So we are definitely exploring all options on the table to see what we can do to help out our system, especially considering these storm events. And we're going to be having future conversations with the community. If you've seen in our city council meetings, we have OHM advisor updates They have a big page on our city website right now, updating further. And this is something that I thank you for. You've provided me a lot of good information too on further grants and opportunities to try and see if we can prevent such from having to go within TIFA spend its dollars and the city at this time.
Thanks, Nick.
If
Are
there's
we looking for a motion to approve? And I'd make a motion to approve if we're going to be splitting it between the residential and the engineering funds.
I will second that motion.
Okay, I will call the roll. Board member.
Thank you, Director.
Board member Pipenbrock,
Yes.
board member Kuzno,
Yes.
board member Secord,
Yes.
board member Ralstrom,
Yes.
board member Mullen,
Yes.
board member Kokoshi,
Yes.
board member Lee, Chairman Hughes,
Yes.
and board member Tompkins.
Yes.
The motion is passed. Chairman Hughes, moving on, we're into new and old business of the agenda. Is there any new and old business to discuss? I do just want to reiterate again, Chairman Hughes did mention it, and I did as well, that I do want to see at this next TIFA board meeting that I'll be bringing for you consideration for parking meter management. I do have a company right now that did visit Grosse Pointe Park, and I'll look to obtain others in the future. So that's my new and old business. And I want to thank this board for their consideration of the DPW expenditure. Other than that, I have nothing further in new and old business. And at this time, Chairman Hughes, I have no written public comment for non-agenda items. However, I do have one hand up for spoken public comments. So give me 1 second to share my screen. Okay, first public comment is Mr. Greg Donnelly. Greg, if you could please state your name, city of residence, and please go ahead.
Hi, Greg Donnelly, Grosse Pointe Park. The demolition of 1166 Maryland is an incredibly embarrassing result of today's meeting. It is only an island today, as referenced multiple times in this meeting, because the city of Grosse Pointe Park made it so by improperly tearing down 3 other adjacent homes for parking lots in the last several years. These existing parking lots on Lake Point in Maryland are dangerous for pedestrians and have absolutely no drainage other than surface runoff into the alleys and streets. While the city manager and several TIFA board members noted today that stormwater management should be considered in this effort, the recent history of the other demolitions and building parking lots right next to 1166 Maryland clearly shows that Grosse Pointe Park does not know how to do this properly. Or maybe even worse, the city doesn't want to do this work properly. Nothing in today's decision ensured that the new or existing parking lots will actually be designed and built with good stormwater practices. In fact, you have absolutely no information about what will be built there or how it will be built. Why even bother with a parking study if you're not going to listen to its recommendations? You TIFA board members who voted for the demolition today should be ashamed of yourselves. And history will show you how ill-advised your decision was. Thank you.
Next public comment is Mary. Mary, if you could please state your name, city residence, and please go ahead.
Thanks, Nick. Mary Rouleau, Grosse Pointe Park. I would ask for an item to be placed on the agenda of your next meeting, and that's a discussion of what this board sees as its role vis-a-vis problem landlords in this district. Post-flood, there were complaints raised at council meetings, and there have been recent Facebook postings. Former council member Robson acknowledged that there were landlords that were known to be bad actors and that it needed to be addressed. So the question is, by whom? Reading the TIFA state statute, it appears that you at least have the authority to repair or rehab a multifamily dwelling unit to support the development area. This would be fully in keeping with your statutory purpose to halt the decline of property values, not to mention the health and safety of TIFA residents. Several of you on this body are landlords. You could bring a lot to the table on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Hughes, I have no further public comment at this time.
Thank you, Director Seisman. If there are no further comments, I'd like to move for adjournment.
I'll
I
make a
second.
motion. Yeah, or second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. We really appreciate it. Have a great evening.